Good morning. My name is Sherry Easton and welcome back. We are ready to start a session on ELA for 3rd through 6th grade. So let's get started. Today we're going to share the book Twice as Good, written by Richard Mickelson, and it's illustrated by Eric Velasquez. I love this book. It's a true story and it has great illustrations, so I chose it for our work today. We've been thinking lately about characters and how they're motivated, or characters, how they all have thoughts, they have things they're thinking. We the reader know those thoughts, and how characters make certain choices in their actions. They do certain things, and that those thoughts and actions move the plot along. So we've been talking about that. Today I want to talk about something else that characters have besides actions, dialogue, their words they speak, and monologue, the thinking they have in their brain, right? Besides those three things, characters also have what we call motivations. Motivation means that you are inspired to do or get something or be something, right? You're motivated to achieve something, right? So characters all want something. They're all motivated by a need or a want, right? Every narrative that we read, every story we read, the characters want or need something, and that motivates them. And those motivations change the way the character acts, right? That changes their actions. So when we read Twice as Good today, we're going to look at the motivations of the main character. The main character's name is Willie. So we're going to look to answer two questions. The first one is, what is Willie's biggest motivation? What does he want more than anything, right? And then how are his actions guided by his motivations? So in other words, what are those motivations? How do they change the way Willie behaves in the story? So let's see if we can figure out his motivation in Twice as Good. Twice as Good. Willie Powell was fast. He was only in the 3rd grade, but he was already faster and could run across the playground way faster than most 5th graders could. But the new golf course was 7 miles outside of town, and he'd promised his mother he would be home before dark. He was fast, but it was a long way. Edgewater Golf Course was the most beautiful sight Willie's eyes had ever seen. The lawns were as smooth as carpets, the brightest green. Willie approached 2 golfers. "Can you teach me to play?" he asked the kinder looking of the men. "Son, didn't anyone ever tell you that your kind is not welcome here?" the man answered. Now we already know his motivation, right? Imagine he wants to learn to play golf, and he wants it so badly that he's willing to be brave enough to ask 2 strangers if they would help him play, right? That's some strong motivation. They said no. And they said no because his kind's not welcome here, which makes me think that they're saying no because he's black, so he can't play golf at Edgewater Golf Course. Let's see how that changes his motivation or his actions. Willie's eyes wanted to cry, but he wouldn't let them, not there. Of course, Willie knew he was different. He was the only Negro in his class. That's an old-fashioned word. It means someone who has black skin. It was dark when Willie got home. He hoped his mother would be asleep, but nope, she was waiting by the front door. First, she hugged Willie tight, and then she told him, "Now you go get me a good whippy switch from one of the willows." Willie knew he deserved a switching, but even now he was planning to sneak back to the new golf course every single chance he got. Getting in trouble wasn't going to stop Willie. See how strong his motivation is? Getting in trouble's not going to stop him. He's going to get what he wants, and he wants to learn how to play golf, right? "You back again, son?" It was the same man who'd mocked Willie weeks before. "You may as well learn to caddy if you're going to be here every day. That means you can carry my clubs." He handed Willie a leather bag filled with 14 sticks carved from thick hickory wood. It was heavy, but Willie already knew he'd have to work twice as hard as the other caddies, even if the bags were heavy. His school principal had told him, "If you're going to get ahead in this world, Willie, you can't be as good as the white children. You have to be twice as good." See how unfair the world is? Still is sometimes, right? It's our job to make it as fair as we can, but for right now, Willie's working in a world that's not fair. By the following year, Willie was being paid 35 cents per bag to caddy. He liked jingling the money in his pocket. That would make me feel good too. Can you imagine? He'd caddy every summer day and study how the better players hit the ball. He'd caddy every single day, and he'd study how the players hit the ball. So he's always motivated by his motivation to learn to golf. Then he'd hike to Dr. Casey's house where his mother worked, answering the phone and writing down the doctor's appointments. One day, Dr. Casey called Willie into his office. "I hear you like to golf, young man," he said. "Yes, sir," Willie answered. "Well, then," the doctor said, "tomorrow you can play the course with me." Willie woke up before the sun and raced the whole way to Edgewater. Now, imagine waking up before the sun. See how motivated he is? How excited he is? When he saw Dr. Casey's car, he hurried over and swung the doctor's golf bag over his shoulder. Hold on, wait a minute. I asked you to play, young man, not to caddy, Dr. Casey said, and he handed Willie his own set of clubs. Willie knew it was rare for a white man to help a young black child. But he couldn't, almost dropped the book. Willie knew it was rare for a white man to help a young black child, but he couldn't think of a single word to say. Thank you just didn't seem enough. Finally, Willie just set his ball on the first tee and took a swing. The ball rose like a shooting star high into the sky. So Dr. Casey does something that really finally teaches him how to play golf, right? Oh, he got his motivation. Now let's see what he's motivated by. Willie practiced every chance he got, and by the time he entered Minerva High, he was the best golfer in the whole school. Willie was proud to be named team captain, and he sure was that if he got the chance to compete, he could win in a local tournament. So one morning, Willie hitchhiked 21 miles to Orchard Hill Golf Course. The judges never expected a Negro to enter the competition, so they hadn't actually forbidden it in the rules. Willie had caddied for many of the Orchard Hills members, and they all liked him, but now they looked away and wouldn't look at his eyes, like they were kind of feeling guilty. Right? "Let the boy play," he finally heard one of the men say. It was the man he'd first caddied for years before. So he's finally going to get to play. Let's see. Willie's hands started to sweat. He was so nervous he could barely hold the club, but he took a deep breath and walked to the first tee. By the time he got to the 15th fairway, Willie was leading the field, and it seemed like the whole town was watching him. His next drive was heading straight for the pin, but on the way down, his ball nicked the skinniest of a twig hanging off of a huge maple tree, and it came to rest in the knee-high grass. "That'll teach his kind to play on our course," he heard someone say. Willie finished third, but he didn't give up. "I'll just have to work twice as hard the next time," he promised himself. Still motivated. Wants to be the best golfer, right? Motivated. First he was motivated by wanting to learn to play. Now he wants to be the best, right? He's willing to get up early. He's willing to work hard. He's willing to practice all day. All of those actions are guided by his motivation. And Willie did keep working hard. He went to college, married his sweetheart Marcella, and went looking for a steady factory job. But America was at war, and soon Willie was drafted into the Army. Willie put on his uniform and hugged Marcella goodbye. He was Sergeant William Powell now, and he had to sail across the ocean to England. Sometimes Willie had to work all day and night at the Army base, but whenever he had time off, Willie would play golf. It seemed like every town in England had a course, and the local people were always polite. Nobody seemed to think that golf was just for white people. Willie had never enjoyed playing golf more, but after 3 years, he was thankful when the war was finally over, because he missed Marcella, and he couldn't wait to sail home. So even though he's free to golf anywhere he wants in England, he misses his family, right? I wonder if he can make it free to golf anywhere in America. Maybe that's his biggest motivation. He wants everybody in America to be able to golf like they can in other countries like England. Let's see. Willie was glad to be back in America, and best of all, Marcella was soon pregnant. She'd been dreaming about having a daughter. Willie had been dreaming too. His dream was to be a professional golfer, and his welcome overseas made him think it was possible. So I'm going to read that again because that tells us a little bit about his motivation, right? Listen to it one more time. Willie had been dreaming too. His dream was to be a professional golfer, and his welcome overseas made him think it was possible. So now we know he's motivated to be a professional golfer. He wants to play for real, for the pros. Professional means to play for money, right? So you get paid as a job to do it instead of just do it as a hobby. So he wants to be able to be a professional golfer where that's his job. But Willie heard the same story at every course he visited that year. Only members are allowed to play here. You can only be a member if you're white. And you're a little too old to caddy, son. Sorry. Every place. "Some folks don't mind me fighting for their freedom," he told Marcella, "but they sure don't mind me sharing their golf clubhouse." I mean, he's got a point, right? Now we can tell he has a family, right? So let's see if his motivations change now that he has a family. But today, nothing could upset Willie. He was playing with his baby daughter, Renee. She grabbed his finger and held it tight. "You have the grip of a champion golfer," he told her. Marcella laughed. "But Renee's a girl," she reminded Willie. "I know she's a girl," Willie answered. "She'll just have to try twice as hard as the boys do." "And she's black," Marcella said. I know she's black, Willie answered. She'll just have to try twice as hard as the white folks do. Then Willie gave Renee a big kiss and held her up high. Someday there will be a course where you'll never be turned away, he told her. Maybe he's motivated to make that course. What do you think? Let's see if that motivation changes his actions. The next afternoon, Willie and Marcella were driving past their favorite farmland when they saw a wooden sign. Willie stopped the car and got out. He strolled right past the chicken coops, the milking barns, the silos, and even the sweet potato patch. There were rolling hills, and he had a clear view in every direction. From right here, he told himself, I can see right into the future. Willie knew the government was lending former soldiers money called GI loans. It was helping them buy houses. So he went to his local bank where his friends had gotten their loans. But the bankers had never expected a Negro to ask for money, so they all liked Willie, they all knew Willie. Sometimes they golfed as his caddy, with Willie as the caddy, but now they looked away from him. Wouldn't look him in the eye. Willie wouldn't give up. He'd just have to try twice as hard to raise the money. He finally convinced 2 local doctors to help him buy the land. For 2 years, Willie worked at the local factory from 3 in the afternoon until 11 at night to support his family. And at the first crack of dawn, he'd head out to dig, weed, mow, plant, and water. Then work until it was time to leave again for the factory. The harder Willie worked, the better he felt. Your daddy is putting the fair back in Fairway, Marcella told Renee. He's a groundbreaker and you'll be one too. And then she laughed because Willie was out digging in the ground again. What she'd meant was that William Powell was ahead of his time. In April 1948, Clearview Golf Club was ready to open. He opened his own golf club. Nice. This course for colored people only, or can I play too? Someone shouted from the road. Willie recognized the man he'd caddied for when he was 9 years old. This here is America's course, Willie told him. He answered proudly, the only color that matters here is the color of the greens. The brightest green. Clearview had been open for 1 year when Renee was turning 3 years old, and Willie gave her a small golf club for her birthday. It fit perfectly in her tiny hands. As Renee grew up, she didn't care that some folks thought Negroes shouldn't be allowed to play golf, and she didn't care that some folks thought girls shouldn't be allowed to play golf. Renee fell in love with the game. Come in for dinner, Marcella called. I'm not done practicing, Renee answered. I need to try twice as hard if I'm going to be a champion. Willie gave his daughter a big hug. You already are my champion, he told her. Renee hugged her daddy back. She felt twice as good as she'd ever felt before, being Willie Powell's daughter. And at the end, it says the rest of the story, and it tells you a little bit more about Willie Powell because it's a true story. So in 1948, Willie Powell became the first person to open a golf course that was open to all people regardless of their color. And we can tell how he was motivated by those actions, or his actions were changed by his motivations, right? What is Willie's biggest motivation? It was to open a golf course that would be where anyone could play, right? That was his biggest motivation. And then how were his actions guided by his motivations? He was willing to get up early. He was willing to work super hard. He was willing to try twice as hard and be twice as good as everyone else, was all the white golfers, so that he would be able to make his motivations, right? So now, from whenever we read, readers, we're going to think about 4 things now. We're going to think about the author's actions, or not the author, the character's actions, the character's thinking, the character's words, and the character's motivation. What does the character want most of all? Happy reading, guys. See you next time.